IVM.
When you start, the club helps you with everything. But once you get good and you want to have your own equipment, obviously you want to take care of your own things, it starts to get expensive and it starts to add up, especially if you're traveling and training abroad like I do. But sailing, the better you get, the more you need to race, because racing in this sport is very experience based, and you can only get it from racing. You cannot get it so much from training. So we have to travel, and the big events happen in Europe, so you have to go to Europe. If we have more sailors in India, it would start to get a bit more affordable, because then we can train within the country, build a team in the country. I think that is the dream for me, to have people at home to train with. Hopefully, us qualifying has brought more attention to it and people will try it. And maybe, hopefully, in a couple of years, we'll have good training bases in India, because we have one of the largest coastlines. And so we're quite lucky with the conditions we have in the country all across the coast. So I hope more people will take it up.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast. My guest, Nethra Kumanan, is the first Indian woman ever to qualify for the Olympics in sailing. She's all set to make history in Tokyo in just a few weeks from now. Not only is she the first woman, but she's also the first Indian ever, man or woman, to qualify through a tournament and not just through a quota system. Nethra grew up in Chennai, where the ocean is as much a part of many people's lives as roads or offices are. Even then, sailing is not something that you see a whole lot. A few days before this recording, I was speaking with her and she told me what sailing means to her. She spoke about how the whole experience of being in the middle of the ocean, just she and her boat, is a feeling of freedom more than anything else. I want to speak to her about this, and also about growing up as a Chennai girl and discovering this extraordinary sport that takes so much out of one, both physically and mentally, and excelling in it at a global level. And also, interestingly, how Bharatanatyam had something to do with it all. This is the Filter Koffee Podcast, and we'll be right back after this very quick break. Stay with us. Nethra, welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
Right. So we are recording on the 25th of May, and I think you're right now talking to us from Spain, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yes, I flew here 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Happy to be here, back training.
Yeah, I'm glad that you skipped the worst part of what was going on. Worst so far of what was going on in Chennai at that point. So at this point, what are you hearing about the Olympic Games? Is it on schedule? It seems to be that way.
There are a lot of rumors. They have been for a while. The population don't want it. The government is pushing to host the Olympics, obviously, for obvious reasons. So far, it looks like it's all on track. It's very strict guidelines. There's a lot of restrictions we have as athletes. We can't go anywhere, do anything. So, but it looks like the games will run as scheduled.
You mean restrictions that will happen once you go to Tokyo? Is that how you mean it?
Getting in, all of these things. Yeah.
Oh, okay. As of now, when do you get into Tokyo?
Plan is to fly on the 12th, hopefully.
Of June?
That works out. Yeah. No, sorry, of July.
Of July, okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. How does it affect, a sportswoman's mind and your preparation for the games as well? I mean, does it have an impact at all? The constant speculation on the dates, and that it's going to be a very tight bubble once you get there and all that. Does it sort of affect your preparation as well?
I mean, it obviously is different from what we're used to. We're used to being able to visit the place that we go to race, and
Right.
it's obviously the fact that nothing is certain is a bit unnerving. But for us, we got to keep doing what we have to do, and kind of fingers crossed that it works out. Yeah.
Nitra, you're the first Indian woman ever to qualify for the Olympics. I will get to that moment in history, like I discussed in the introduction, just shortly. But before that, I want to start off with what childhood was like for you growing up in Chennai.
I went to different, not the most regular. My schooling was a bit different than normal. We started at Pathshala Montessori, which is a kind of very hands-on learning environment, and then we moved to KFI, Krishnamurti Foundation of India, which is again different from normal schools, and we used to do all sorts of things, even just being in school. But aside from that, you name it, I've tried it. I used to play piano. I was singing, dancing. I was painting, all sorts of things. Uh, I must have tried most things. In school, we played basketball, football, volleyball, everything. Yeah, I guess sailing is what's stuck.
What kind of dance were you into?
I did Bharatanatyam for like 7 years, I want to say. I'm not sure, but I think it was 7 years.
Did you do an arangetram and all of that?
Eh, okay, my problem was I was very strong as a dancer. I was good at the physical part of it, but the emotional part of it, I really struggled. So I kind of stopped. I started sailing around that time when I realized that was a struggle for me. Kind of just I let go of dance and went into sport more. But yeah.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about, the kind of family that you were. Were your parents or anybody else in the family into any kind of sport? What was their line of work?
Both my parents did athletics in school. I think they were both quite good at it, but they did not pursue that at all. They went the normal route. Uh, my mom was into HR consultancy for a while, and when she had me and then my brother, I think she stayed at home. And my dad was in not banking, but the IT field, and now he has his own company that does cybersecurity. Yeah, and they've been the ones pushing me when I didn't believe in myself. They did. So I've been very lucky with them.
Was physical education and sport like a regular part of growing up, or did you always, as a family and as an individual, have a lot of emphasis on that?
Not particularly. I was playing a lot of sports outside of normal. I like to spend most of my time outdoors. And even in our apartment, we would go downstairs and run around the compound. But not particularly. We weren't serious about anything. My parents, I think they gave up sports after high school. But after lockdown, they've started trying to get back in their fitness a little bit. But yeah.
I'm sure they are very famous right now. You spoke about trying out different sports, and Chennai has a long history of many different sports, isn't it? Whether tennis, cricket, squash, badminton, or even swimming. Surfing is pretty big these days, but sailing is obviously not a very popular option. What was your first encounter with the sport?
Uh, well, I did try all of those things. I did play badminton, swimming, all of these things I've done. I think the only sport I'd never liked was cricket. But sailing, to get into the club, you need to go into the port trust of Chennai, and there's a procedure. But once you get in, it's a bit full of sand and coal everywhere. depending on which time of year you're there. But once you get the boat ready and you go out onto the ocean, it's something you don't normally, I never experienced to that extent. And there's a certain freedom and a certain exhilarating thing about being on the ocean on your own, uh, kind of in charge of what happens to you and your boat. It's not unsafe, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, it's something about it just, well, obviously, uh, reeled me in. And what?
It was very beautiful how you put it. The port trust you're talking about, of course, is near the harbor, not very far from the marina. When did you first go there to sail?
My parents used to put me and my brother both in summer camps. They tried to keep us occupied. And it was just one summer, I think 2011, if I'm not wrong, that sailing was the camp of choice. And our club used to, or still does, host summer camps every summer for a week or 2 weeks. And we did that. I did that, and then my brother did it the next week. And it kind of just stuck. And we've been there for a couple of years. We spent every weekend there.
Oh, nice.
All the other activities kind of, because you had to spend the whole day there, and we didn't have time for much else. So everything else kind of we let go slowly, one by one. But yeah.
So now you have encountered the sport and also started loving it. What was initial years with sailing like? You mentioned the sailing club, but are there local and domestic tournaments like we have in other sports? How did you get better at it?
So there are, well, to answer your first question, there are two clubs in Chennai in the Port Trust. Mine is at the moment looking for a new venue, but there is the Tamil Nadu Sailing Association and TNSA and the Royal Madras Yacht Club, which is RMYC, which is where all of both the clubs are running out of that place right now. There's a lot of leisure sailing that people do out of RMYC as well. It's the older of the two. And when we started the summer sailing camps, we were at the club that did all the two kids to more events. It was a more competitive club of the two, was what we were told. I don't want to step on any toes or anything, but yeah, so we went to nationals after a year of spending every weekend at the club. And we had a national event in Hyderabad, which we still have every year. It's the lake is not exactly the cleanest of lakes, but half of us would be sick and racing, and it would be windy, so it would be extremely fun. And I think I went to that event every year since. Yeah, that's where I started competing. And as a girl, I had my first national medal when at my first event because I want many girls. But I was, I think, fifth or seventh overall, so it wasn't too bad for my first event. So kind of when we started sailing, like to get national medals so early, obviously is a good thing for your resume, to get into college, whatever. So obviously, my parents started to push me and my brother. And so, yeah, we spent like 3, 4 weeks at events every year. Uh, got some medals out of it, and yeah.
That's amazing. Is sailing an expensive sport to pursue?
Uh, it can be. I won't lie, but when you start, the club helps you with everything. But once you get good and you want to have your own equipment, obviously you want to take care of your own things, it starts to get expensive and it starts to add up, especially if you're traveling and training abroad like I do. It definitely can get very expensive. But sailing, the better you get, the more you need to race because racing in this sport is very experience based, and you can only get it from racing. You cannot get it so much from training. So we have to travel, and the big events happen in Europe, so you have to go to Europe. If honestly, if we have more sailors in India, it would start to get a bit more affordable because then we can train within the country, build a team in the country. I think that is the dream for me, to have people at home to train with. But right now, obviously, it's not the most popular sport, and hopefully, us qualifying has brought more attention to it, and people will try it. And maybe, hopefully, in a couple of years, we'll have good training bases in India because we have one of the largest coastlines, and it's quite sad that we don't have more sailing right now. And we have great conditions year around. Like in Europe, during winter, nobody can sail because everything is frozen, So we're quite lucky with the conditions we have in the country all across the coast. So I hope more people will take it up. Yeah.
And I think you're a forerunner as far as that is concerned, and I'm very sure in your career you're going to inspire many generations of sailors. But at this point, is the lack of sailing as a sport, is it just pure awareness that this is a kind of sport that you can pick up? Because we don't, growing up, I never really watched sailing anywhere. Um,
Definitely.
I was. I mean, I was lucky enough to watch the America's Cup once in my life, but a person growing up in India generally doesn't really see this. It's not
Yeah,
very
yeah.
visible. Is that the reason behind?
It's definitely a huge part of it. I mean,
Hmm.
100% people knew about it. I'm sure more people would give it a shot. But yes, it is expensive. It's a little less accessible than running, for instance, where you just need your shoes. You pick up your shoes and go running. But sailing, you need there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Yes, you need your equipment and all this. But it's a routine, and once you build it, it's quite rewarding to be able to do it every day. But yeah, definitely, if I think an increased awareness will change this a bit. Well, at least it's a step forward. But yeah, we have to see because we're a huge country with a huge coastline, like I was saying, and
Hmm.
it's getting more and more accessible. So hopefully,
I asked about the economics of the sport because you come from a regular family, economically speaking, and supporting you in the sport must have been a big decision collectively for your parents as well, especially because of the money involved. When did all of you collectively make that decision that this is your sport and this is going to be a long haul? When did that penny drop?
it's funny because sorry, just to digress a little, there were four of us that qualified, and me and one of the 49er boys. We came from the same school, and I believe him, Ganapati, for him, what the decision was made 4 years before it was made for me, that I made it. And it was the same circumstances that our school allowed only 10 days of leave per year. And I qualified for the Asian Games, and it was impossible to even travel there within that time because a sailing event is a week, a 7 day event, and we need to go there a week earlier to train to acclimatize. And we don't do just one event a year, we do multiple. So at that point, I kind of, it was quite a spontaneous decision to kind of, I mean, it's not every day you qualify to the Asian Games. So me and my parents kind of just decided, okay, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Well, I thought at that point, and because I knew I was going to the Asian Games, which is a huge thing for me, and at that point we decided, okay, we're gonna leave school. I think I was in 11th. I was halfway through 11th grade, and it was a strange decision to make, like at this point in my schooling, but it was kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It was just something I knew I could do, and an opportunity I didn't want to miss. And Ganapati did the same thing 4 years before me. He also qualified for the Asian Games and left school, and decided to pursue sailing. But we didn't know at that point that it was not an easy decision because I think when you leave the in quote normal uh, way of life, you kind of have to work harder in some ways, and it wasn't an easy choice, but definitely one I would never take back. And at that point is when we decided I'm going to give this a shot. And when I saw at the Asian Games that I was as fast as the girls that won, if not, I wasn't as experienced, which obviously affects the results, but I was definitely had the speed as a very young sailor, and that kind of was kind of a promising thing for me to see, and that's when we kind of decided to pursue it.
Which year
Yeah,
was this, Netra?
2014, I want to say. Yeah,
Right. So pretty much around that time is when you, I'm assuming, in your family as well, sort of knew that this is now a long haul.
yeah.
This is where you wanted to go. Right.
Hmm.
Right. And it's amazing what you've been able to do since then. Um,
Yeah, we're coming up to the my possibly my third Asian Games. So yeah, and
right.
my first Olympics, obviously. But yeah, it's
Right. And
yeah.
how was that first Asian Games? How did that turn out for you?
It was an experience, definitely, because they have the same type of village that they would have at the Olympics. There's the Games Village, and you get to see all these other athletes. Like you see these towering basketball players, and then you see the really short, like wrestlers and things like this. And it's quite incredible to be in that kind of atmosphere where everyone is there to perform. Me, my first time, I was just kind of in for the fun of it. Obviously, do my best and learn what I could. But, well, like I said, the sailing itself, I definitely lacked experience and I didn't really know how to race at that point. But my boat speed was like up to par with I was faster than like the girl who finished third, for instance.
Hmm.
So obviously it was a good sign for me. Yeah.
This, I'm assuming, is the ancient Asian Games
Yeah,
in Korea, right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So at this point in your career, who's coaching you? Do you have a dedicated coach? Are you still with the club?
So I had just when I qualified, we were training with our chief national coach at the point was this gentleman named Peter Conway, and he was focused on the skiffs, the double-handed class, and he wanted me to be able to get more attention. So he sent me to this guy in Israel. His name was Eshed Mazeret. So I trained with him after he went to the Asian Games with me, and I spent 2 years with him after as well, trying to qualify for Rio, which in hindsight I could have done, but I was mentally not able to handle the pressure of qualifying.
Right.
So after not qualifying in 2016, I decided I was kind of forced to take a year off because obviously not qualifying meant I didn't get any financial support.
Hmm.
And at that point, my dad wanted to leave his job as well. So he quit and I came home. And I think for a year and a half, I didn't sail except maybe one event, this Hyderabad event I was telling you about. And in 2018, I believe, I found this place in Gran Canaria.
Hmm.
And they had this incredible coach that I am lucky enough to be able to work with till today. His name is Tamas Ezra. He came with me to Oman and everything. So I'm very happy to be where I am right now. And yeah, and also I was lucky enough to be found by Go Sports, and they helped me with a nutritionist and a psychologist. So getting those two things dialed in as well has really made a huge difference. And obviously, this time around, it worked and I qualified. So yeah, I'm happy with the way I'm going. So.
Once you did not qualify for Rio Olympics, you
Mhm.
mentioned that there was a huge pressure and you were not able to handle it. What kind of pressure and how did you sort of cope with that since then?
So for me, I'm the kind of person that kind of puts everything on myself. I don't like to A, show people what I'm feeling, and B, ever put my feelings on someone else. And my parents were spending a lot of money for me to be training and living in Israel, which I was doing before Rio. And I was doing it as a personal coach instead of training with a group. So it was quite expensive. And I kind of took that burden on myself because the family money was going on being spent on me at that point of time. And for me, all of that kind of was for me to qualify. And so if I didn't qualify, I would be wasting, all of that sacrifice and of time, money, and time away from family, friends. It would all be for nothing. So I took all of that pressure on myself for that event, which at the event itself, I knew I was fast enough. I knew I was better than the other girls, and I would be leading most of the races, but then I would start to think, and which obviously distracts from the decision making that sailing requires. And instead of finishing first, second, or even third, I finished, I think, seventh, if I'm not wrong, which was a big slap in the face for me. So obviously at the event, I didn't handle the pressure very well. So since I found a mental coach and we've been working together for a year almost, maybe a bit more now, especially through lockdown and everything, we had a lot of time to work. And now I've learned to separate my general life from my performance and trying to hone in on the skills I need to perform. And it's made a huge difference. It still is. It's a work in progress. And I'm getting there, I'd like to believe. Uh,
You mentioned you didn't sail for a year and a half.
mhm.
Did that give you perspective to the sport itself when you did sail regularly after that? Were you doing things differently?
So this was 2016, 17, I believe. And yeah, it was a year away from sailing, and I used that time to finish high school. I did open schooling and just finished my last year to graduate. And I think I definitely missed sailing a lot. I was quite upset for a while. It was a bit of a shock for me because I was expecting to qualify. Very reasonably, I should have. So I was quite upset for a while with it, and I think the time off was quite good. But at this point, this was a time when the International Olympic Committee wanted gender equality in our sport. So what they did was they decreased the men's spots at the Olympics and increased a lot our spots in my class for the laser radio, and which is now called the ILCA 6. And so World Sailing started this program for the emerging nations, and they selected me for it. So I was suddenly supported by World Sailing for for a year. They brought us to Aarhus in Denmark for a couple of months that year, and I got to start sailing again because of that. And that's how it picked up again. And they said with this increased pods, and they knew I was quite talented, and they kind of encouraged me to start again and build my confidence back up and all of that. It's been a journey for sure. And I have missed opportunities since to qualify earlier as well. But, everything happens for a reason, and I'm here now. So it is what it is.
You said about the reason you went to a psychologist was to handle pressure better. How was it different this time around, and what are some of the things that you picked up from working with the psychologist as well?
I've been working with this guy for a year plus, and especially over lockdown and over the period that we were training by ourselves on our own skills in a small group. We spent a lot of time in training, kind of finding where to focus and how to focus on just the relevant things and not where like the result or anything like that, and kind of using little things to kind of bring up the adrenaline when I didn't have so much, or bringing it down when I had too much. Just kind of being objective about the things that bothered me and letting those things go, or using them to increase the performance, or depending on the situation, and things like that. Kind of just controlling my state of mind and my attitude every time we had to race, performing when I need to perform and recovering when I need to recover, not
Mm.
stressing about the day for all the evening, that kind of thing is what we've been working on and still working on. So, yeah.
You mentioned your event, which is the laser radial class itself. And I've heard you talk about the event, and I tried to understand the event itself. To me, it sounded more like something that is more physical in nature, not so much about technology, and also something that is very tactical in nature. Talk to us a little bit more about your particular event and how you see it.
So, sailing, racing on, say, the Olympic event is a race where everyone starts together and you have to kind of make your way around a course of marks in a specific order, and it's all relative to the wind direction. And my boat, the laser, is the single-handed dinghy. Dinghy is a small boat, and in the Olympics, there's a men's and a women's laser, and I obviously say the women's. Our boat is very physical, as you said. It's we kind of use our body weights and our basically our legs to leverage the power on the sail. And the more you can do it, the more wind you can hold, and the faster you can go. So in that way, it's very physical, and as the waves come in, as the wind builds, it gets more and more physical, as you can imagine. And because we are one design class, all the boats are the same, and we basically go at very similar speeds. And for us, every meter is the difference between first and 20, sometimes. Sometimes it's a lot more as the wind builds up, but when it's light winds, for example, sometimes the fleet finishes within 20 meters, and it like one tiny mistake, a lapse of judgment for 15 seconds could cost you the whole fleet, So it is very tactical. It's a lot of boat on boat tactics, a lot of decision making, and it's about kind of how long you can keep your awareness as open and as present as possible, and also be able to see where the wind is, where the rest of the fleet is, and everything kind of, it's who puts everything together best and who makes the least mistakes that win regattas. And because it lasts over a week, and the goal is to be consistent and not have like a boat that wins a regatta could not even have won a single race. You could be fifth in every race and still win the event. So yeah, it's a very interesting sport, and I encourage everyone to have a look.
I'm most certainly excited than ever to more than have a look. But it sounds like a sport, Netra, where it definitely seems very physical. More importantly, it seems to be something where you need to be present mentally at
Mhm.
all points in time. It seems almost seems like a game of chess, isn't it?
Yeah, in some ways, in Oman, it was funny because we had our only entertainment, because we were in a bubble and we were not allowed to leave the hotel. We had a sort of entertainment game room at the back of the hotel, and that was our entertainment. And we had we had a table tennis table and a couple of chess boards, and that's what we would do. Me, not always, I have to admit, but that's like the boys will be playing chess and we will be watching. And it was quite interesting to find that racing is very much like chess. It's a lot of kind of calculating what you think the others are going to do and positioning yourself the right way to kind of influence what they will do. And it is that's very true. It is a lot like chess. And the four of us had qualified. My brother also sometimes. Sometimes we still play chess online. It's quite interesting, yes, for sure.
That's amazing. Nethra, I wanted to ask you about something else, which is,
Mm.
historically, if you look at India and sports, we've excelled in many, many different sports. We've excelled a lot in team sports. But it's very rare that, we as a country, we've excelled in sports where endurance and the physicality is so important and critical. I wanted to talk to you about, of course, you've been through a lot of coaching and training at the hands of experts. But what about your childhood, or what about the way you sort of grew up? What are those aspects that have sort of helped you get there physically?
I did come into sailing quite late. I was older than most that start sailing. I think people generally start at the age of 6 and come from a family of sailors. And me, it wasn't the case. I was, I believe, 12 or 14 or something. And as a kid, I was always like in our PE exams, I was always the only one who could do all the push ups, I was not the fastest runner or anything. Once I grew up, I couldn't run. I was really bad at it. I hated it. I still don't like it, honestly, but I was quite strong. Also, I did Bharatanatyam, like we spoke before, and I think the Bharatanatyam legs have helped me in do what I do because it's the same muscles we use. And yeah, I thought
What
it
have
was
you
really,
learned from
yeah.
what have you learned from Bharatanatyam that you have sort of imported into the sport?
I was very lucky to have learned from this incredible lady. Her name is Alarmir Bali, and I think she is still to this day one of my role models, like one of the people I aspire to be anything like as I grow up. And she kind of helped us. I think I learned my discipline from her. Uh, her and my mom for always taking me to class, but uh, my discipline, kind of work ethic, and kind of perfection and kind of elegance to things we do, and it was quite an incredible experience. I didn't always think it at the time, but I'm very grateful to have been part of that dance school. It was good fun, and it was a lot about kind of perfecting the details. And we would see a lot of other dance schools, and people would kind of just go through the motions and learn as much as possible and finish the regatum as quickly as possible. And we were not like that. We would spend years doing the same thing and kind of perfecting it and getting the line straight or looking the right way or smiling the right way. No, sorry, that sounded bad, but with the right posture and everything like that. So it was a good experience for sure. I learned a lot from that.
Do you still
Yeah.
dance? I mean,
No, no, no.
practice.
Not at all. I think practice was the hardest for me. Yeah. I was never good at that.
Right. Nithra, you're not just the first woman to qualify for the Olympics in sailing, but you're also the first Indian to qualify directly, right, through a qualification race. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is that the 8 or 10 men, all of them,
9.
9 of them, yeah, who qualified before you, they've all sort of qualified through some sort of a quota system, not the regular qualification method. Is that correct?
That's what I hear. I have not fact checked that, but that is what I hear. A lot of
Right.
they have qualified, but I believe not directly through racing. So yeah, technically there were four of us that qualified in the same event, but I was the first because I had enough points to have done it the day earlier than the last day. The point difference I had was large enough that I kind of, it wasn't confirmed, but there was no way for me not to qualify, at that point. So yeah, so it was a kind of a technicality that I was the first to ever do it. But
Right.
yeah.
Last year, post the Oman race, you ended up spending almost the entire lockdown in Gran Canaria, isn't it? Talk to us about this. Was this a forced lockdown? How did you end up doing that? And how was the experience?
So what happened was our qualification event was supposed to be in Abu Dhabi and it was supposed to happen a year earlier. It was the rest of the team had already traveled. Like they wanted to spend a month there training, and I had no interest in doing that. I wanted to train with my group, and I wanted to be at home, spend time with my family a bit, relax, rewind, like you were saying, and travel there a week earlier. And just when I was about to travel, they canceled the event. They said it could happen next month, it could happen next year, we don't know. So I decided to fly here to GC. And what happened was a couple of days later, the world went into lockdown, and at first I was stuck here. But what they did for us, they made one room into kind of an indoor gym, and we tried to keep our fitness up. We did a little strength balance session once a day, every day once, and we put our bikes on a smart trainer. We had one bike in the house, and we put it on a smart trainer, and we would just take turns on the bike doing cardio as well. So in a way, we got to train as well. We got to at least keep the fitness up. And I spent this time working with my psychologist and nutritionist, kind of trying to figure all of those things out. Because before I came here, honestly, I could not cook. I still can't, but at least now I can feed myself a bit healthier. So it was a good time to have, a good time to kind of reflect. It was hard at times for sure, and it was difficult because there was only two of us, and I think as girls we get tired of each other fast. But no, we still get to train with each other, and it's been great. And yeah, like you were asking me before about the training group here, and it's been incredible because we have very different levels of sailing, and but we're all similar speeds, and we all bring different strengths to the table, and we learn so much from each other. Like Vasilia is obviously a medal hopeful, and there's two more of us going to the Olympics from the team, me and a girl from Spain. There were more that could have qualified, but unfortunately didn't this time. And there are a couple of young girls on the team as well who are really talented. So we pick up a lot from each other, and it's been quite an ideal scenario to learn from. And I hope to be able to use it better and better and get more efficient with myself and how I utilize all of this opportunity that I have. It's about me making the best of it right now because I am in an ideal scenario where people think that you need a personal coach and you need to work one on one with somebody, always having their eyes on you. But honestly, you can do a lot more for yourself, I think, at least for me personally. Um, it's always I feel lucky to be in this scenario, and yeah.
You spoke about the sport itself becoming more gender neutral. Now, in India, being an athlete itself is a challenge if you're not a cricketer. How was growing up as a woman sportsperson, and what were some of the glass ceilings you had to break? More importantly, what will you tell young girls who want to take up sports as a career?
Yeah. Well, I've been lucky because I have spent majority of my training in Europe, and here people are a bit less discriminating or differentiating the genders less. Like people are more aware that women can do incredible things just like men can, But in India, I would go to the gym and people would be surprised that I would lift heavy weights. It's kind of, you get these looks, and there are people that come up and ask like what sport you do, but it's not. You kind of have to treat it as what it is. You have to understand there's a reason people think that. Obviously, it's not ideal and it's not great, but at the end of the day, you kind of just have to do what you have to do. Do your best, put in the work, and what people think is quite irrelevant. Like, other than like your core team, nothing. What other people think normally doesn't affect you, shouldn't affect you. You shouldn't let it affect you, because people have opinions. People want to include themselves when you're doing well. They want to distance themselves when you're doing badly. It's kind of you can't depend on anyone but yourself and your core team and your family. And those are the only opinions that should matter and do matter. Even that, not always, but as long as you do what's best for you and your sport, uh, everything else kind of comes later. Yeah.
Great. You're training in Gran Canaria in Spain, and I'm assuming the your event is going to be in a place called Shima Yacht Harbor.
Mm.
Is there similar conditions to what you're training in?
So in sailing, you're right to think there's a very differing conditions, and it can be anything from flat water and zero wind, or flat water and a lot of wind, to huge waves and big currents, or it can in a variety of combinations of these things as well. There's a lot of other things that come into play as well. I don't want to confuse the thing, but in Enoshima, it can be light wind, it can be windy. They have storms, they have typhoons. Depends what we get when it comes to racing the race days. Here in Gran Canaria, we have big swell, big waves, because we're on an island in the middle of the ocean, and we're lucky to have a lot of wind, especially this time of year. And what we are doing to try to keep fresh is we go to a lake in Hungary next month, and we spend some time training in flat water and light wind. So we kind of have that skill set in, we're kind of ready for anything. Because in sailing, a lot of the time, what happens is you don't get what is normal. Like, we could say that in this place we have big swell and big wind, and then it comes to race week, and it's all the wind is gone, the waves are gone. So we kind of just have to be ready for everything and prepared. So Enoshima could be anything. It could be huge current, huge waves, typhoons, like I was saying, or it could be light wind, big swell. Yeah.
Every time you speak about your sport, I think the word that you use the most is the wind.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with wind? Is it a friend?
That's a good question. um, I had a couple of years where I was very unlucky, but now I don't know what it is, but I've been quite lucky. I enjoy, well, in India, at nationals, for example, I've been known to be the windy sailor because I'm the heaviest and the strongest, and
Does that
I
mean you
obviously
sail
train
better
more.
when it is in windy conditions? Is that what it means?
Yeah, yes, I'm a bit fitter, and I train more in these conditions, and my technique is a bit better. So yes, but once the wind drops, the weight makes a huge difference. So people that are 20 kilos lighter than me have an advantage. And then it kind of, I'm at a disadvantage. But now, so this, I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago, when this made a huge difference to me. But now I've kind of increased that range and of what I can do in what condition. Like in Oman, we had races in nothing, in no wind, and I was still definitely in the race. So yeah, it kind of just comes down to practice and training, and yeah, Is the wind my friend? I don't know. I hope so. You know.
We all certainly hope so. It is in Hiroshima at least.
Yeah.
Netra, you've sailed. You spoke about Oman. Oman is also for the uninitiated, the place where you qualified for the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics. Then of course you spoke about sailing in Port Trust, which is not very far from the Marina Beach and near the harbor. And
Yeah.
you spoke about Hyderabad and of course in Gran Canaria. Do you have a favorite sea where you always had a great time sailing?
Whew. Whew. We race everywhere. Like we travel a lot. Obviously, Chennai is, I have to say, is the best because you can sail all year round, which you cannot do in most places in Europe. I haven't been to places like Australia and America so much, but in Europe, obviously, I like sailing here because we train here so much. And as I get better at it, I like it more and more, you know. Favorite place? That's difficult. I don't know, honestly. I will say home because, it's home.
Of course, yes. You're training with Tamas in Gran Canaria. You're also training with a lot of medal hopefuls
Hmm.
in your training camp. I've heard Vasilia, if I'm pronouncing her name right.
Yeah.
She's one of the people who's part of your group, and I've heard
Hmm.
she's a medal hopeful.
She has
Um,
a.
how do you rate the kind of competition that you have, especially where you're training? More importantly, when you look at this Olympics, what will success look like at this stage in your career?
It's early. It's very early on.
Mm.
It's my first Olympics, and I'm quite young. And I don't want to say inexperienced, but compared to girls, this is the third Olympics. I am inexperienced, you know. And I think success in my fleet is the largest fleet. We have 44 boats, whereas the 49ers have only 19 boats. The lasers, the boys single-handed dinghy has only 35 boats. So for me, top half of the fleet, anything above that is, I think, in some ways a success. But for me, I think success is I will measure more in terms of how I handle the pressure of being there, how I am able to sail. It might be a bad number, it might be a great number, but I, because it is a process, it's not exact. I know I'm not there yet to fight for a medal, but so for me, it's going to be in a way a training regatta in trying to figure out how to really perform when it really matters, you know, which is a very different thing than normal racing. So it's going to be an experience for sure. It's going to be a different one given that we are not even allowed to go to the opening ceremony.
Hmm.
But so we kind of miss the grandeur of it all, but it's going to be like any other event. We're not in the normal games village because we're outside of Tokyo. So we're going to be amongst the same people as usual. So success is going to be, if you ask for numbers, I would say something in the top half of the fleet.
Hmm.
Like 20s is a good result for me, you know. And anything above that, I would say is great and is what I'm aiming for. So yeah,
Right, and I'm assuming that'll be a monumental effort, right? Like to be in the top
yeah,
20
yeah. Hmm.
at this point in time. And more than
Yeah.
anything else, I really hope you have a great time.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes, me too.
Netra, you obviously you need to, given that your sport is so mental and it takes so much out of you. Um, I'm assuming unwinding and sort of recovering and taking time off it is going to be equally important. We usually end the episode by
Yeah.
asking our guests what he or she is watching or listening to. What do you watch to sort of unwind?
Uh, oof. Well, before to unwind, what I'm watching right now, I'm watching the Vikings. And it's kind of a gruesome TV show. It's kind of just a distraction from normal life, But to wind down, I kind of turn on something on YouTube where you don't have to watch, you kind of just have to listen to their voice and don't really have to pay attention. Like I sometimes find myself watching random road bicycle tutorials and things like this, like cycling adventures people take. I've recently gotten very into cycling. I enjoy it. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it. So I watch a lot of those to unwind. I listen to whatever is playing, honestly. Nothing particular.
Right. Did you cycle a lot when you were in Chennai?
I tried to. It's so hot in Chennai compared to here. I was. If I cycled, we would cycle like 3 hours, and I would come home and go back to bed. It was quite difficult, but I tried to like a couple of times a week. There are good groups in Chennai cycling a lot.
Where did you cycle? Where do you normally cycle?
From OMR to Mahabalipuram was the normal route and back.
Right. I love that even in cycling, you're not very far from the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Nethra, thank you so much for your time and wishing you all the luck in Japan. And more than anything else, like I said, I really hope you have a wonderful time.
Thank you very much. I hope so too.
Great, thanks. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik, that's Karthik with an H on Twitter, and Filter _Koffee, that's coffee with a K on Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Ciet, and PayPal. Thank you so much. You make everything possible. Before I recommend a couple of episodes, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about Ankush Champanerkar. Ankush was a team member who we lost due to COVID-related complications. He was a really fun guy, and I wish I knew him better than I got to know him in the short time he was with us. But I hope that you can remember him in your thoughts and prayers. Also, quick reminder about Pod for Change, the initiative set up by the podcasting community, along with Give India, the NGO partner. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and I'm sure that it would be much appreciated any donations that you could give. With that, let me quickly give you a couple of highlights from this week. Aditi Mittal was on Cyrus Says. Great episode, do check that out. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks about using the word impossible and suggests some better alternatives. On Advertising is Dead, Varun was joined by Harsh Lal, the co-founder of the Soul Store. On This Round is on Me, Gauri talks to Pankit Desai, who is the co-founder and CEO of Secure Tech. And finally, I'd like to mention that we have a new show called Tede Mere Raste, hosted by Keshav Chaturvedi. This time it's a trip to the beautiful blue city of Jodhpur, but every week he's going to tell you about his travels as a photographer. It's really well put together, really well done. I couldn't be more excited about the show. Please do definitely check that out. And with that, I hope we see you again next week.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset, and everything sport.
So tune in to the Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.